A case over 60 years old has finally come to a close. The person who murdered Mary Theresa Simpson in 1964 has been identified in a news conference today with the Elmira Police Department.
A man was buried under a name that wasn't his for over 2 decades, and it took a DNA match with odds of 1 in 320 billion to finally put the right one on his grave. 62 years earlier, in Elmira, New York, a 12-year-old girl named Mary Theresa Simpson left her cousin's house and never made it home. 4 days later, someone found her under a pile of stones on a hillside. For 6 decades, nobody had a name for who did it. Hundreds of interviews, 2 failed DNA runs, a case that outlived most of the detectives who worked it. One woman never stopped waiting on an answer, her sister, who was 16 the year it happened, and is 78 now. He was never a suspect, not once, in 62 years.
This wooded area just off Combs Hill Road is where 60 years ago, the body of 12-year-old Mary Theresa Simpson was found covered in rocks and debris.
This is a historic day for the Elmira Police Department, justice after almost 62 years. On Sunday, March 15th, 1964, at approximately 10:50 p.m., 12-year-old Mary Theresa Simpson was reported missing by her father.
Elmira in the early 60s was a small city where everybody's paths crossed more than once. That's where Mary Theresa Simpson grew up. Her parents, Ellsworth and Rose, split up in May of 1963. Mary stayed with her father. By the end of that year, the two of them had moved out to Hammondsport, which meant her mother only got to see her about once a month. Then, just weeks before her death, they moved back to Elmira. Her father had found work there. New town, new house, same daughter, trying to keep up. The papers at the time didn't say much about who she was. One headline just called her a quiet, good girl. Her mother described her, in almost the same breath, as active, shy, and quiet. It's her sister, Linda, who fills in the rest. She was a very active person, and she was very shy, Linda said, decades later. They went to the neighborhood house together. Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts, roller skating, the old kind, metal wheels clamped right onto your shoes, tightened with a key, dance lessons, summer camp. Linda was 4 years older, close enough in age to do everything together, far enough ahead to remember it all clearly now. They were sisters, the way kids are before anyone tells them time is running out. And in March of 1964, neither one of them had any idea how little of it they had left. March 15th, 1964, a Sunday. Around 3 in the afternoon, Mary left her father's apartment. She told him she was heading to her cousin's house. That part was true. It just wasn't the whole story. Before she got there, Mary stopped at her mother's. Her father didn't know about it. There was no reason for him to. It wasn't a secret, not really. Just a daughter splitting an afternoon between 2 houses, the way kids of divorced parents learn to do without anyone making it complicated. She stayed about an hour. Then she left for her cousin's, like she'd said she would. She left her cousin's house around 6:30. Somewhere in that same window, 6:30, maybe closer to 7, a friend spotted her standing in front of a store. Mary told her she was on her way home. That's the last anyone ever saw of her. Elmira wasn't a big place. Home wasn't far. It should have taken her 20 minutes, maybe less. Her father waited, watched the clock the way parents do, telling themselves there's still a reasonable explanation, right up until there isn't one left. 7 turned into 8. 8 turned into 9. By 11 o'clock, Ellsworth Simpson picked up the phone and called the police. He had no way of knowing it yet, but somewhere between her mother's house and that store, his daughter had already crossed paths with the last person she'd ever meet. Elmira police took the report that night. At first, nobody treated it like an emergency. A missing 12-year-old, a little late getting home. It happens. Kids lose track of time. The next day, that assumption started to crack. Officers searched empty houses around the neighborhood. They talked to her friends, trying to piece together where she might have gone. And that same day, quietly, without any public announcement, police reached out to the district attorney's office. That's not a call you make for a kid who's just late. By March 18th, 3 days in, the language around the case had changed completely. This wasn't a missing child anymore. This was foul play. Officers tore through vacant buildings, abandoned houses, junkyards, anywhere a person could be hidden and not found by accident. Word went out to police departments across New York and into Pennsylvania. Every department in range now had Mary Theresa Simpson's name and description. And still, nothing. 3 days, a citywide search, a district attorney already involved, departments in 2 states on alert, a 12-year-old girl, and not one single trace of her. Whatever had happened to Mary, it hadn't happened anywhere police were looking. It would take one more day, and it wouldn't be an officer who found her. It'd be a man out hiking with his 2 sons, about to walk into something none of them were prepared for. March 19th, 1964, 4 days after Mary went missing, a man was out hiking with his 2 sons in a wooded area off Combs Hill Road in Southport, about 7 miles from the Simpson home. This wasn't a search party, just a family, out for the day. Then they found her. She was fully clothed. Someone had covered her with dirt, tree branches, and stones. One paper at the time put the weight of the rocks alone at over 300 pounds. Her mouth had been packed with dirt and twigs. The autopsy that followed confirmed what the scene already suggested. She'd been sexually assaulted. She'd been strangled. Cause of death, asphyxiation. And one more detail investigators would lean on for decades. She hadn't been killed somewhere else and dumped here. This hillside was where it happened. Word moves fast in a city Elmira's size. By the next morning, there wasn't a person in town who hadn't heard. A missing girl was one kind of story. A murdered 12-year-old, found under rocks on a hillside 7 miles from her own front door, was an entirely different one. For 4 days, this had been a search. Search parties, empty houses, 2 states on alert, a family hoping for the best outcome they could still reasonably hope for. That hope ended on Combs Hill Road. What started as a missing persons case was now a homicide investigation, and whoever had done this had a 4-day head start. Elmira threw everything it had at this. By October of 1964, police had questioned around 300 people. The local radio station, Whelm, teamed up with the Star-Gazette to raise $1,000 in reward money, bumped up to $5,000 by 1972, when the trail had gone cold enough that somebody figured a bigger number might shake something loose. It didn't. No arrest, no suspect who ever stuck. The case didn't die, exactly. Cases like this rarely get an official burial, but it went quiet. Detectives retired. New ones inherited a box of evidence and a name they couldn't do anything with. Then, in 2003, 39 years later, a break, or what looked like one. Forensic investigators finally ran tests on fluid found on Mary's skirt and confirmed it was semen. That meant DNA. That meant, for the first time since 1964, there was something concrete to search with. They entered the profile into CODIS, the national database. No match. They tried again in 2014. Same profile, same database, 11 more years of new entries to check it against. Still nothing. You'd think that's where a story like this ends, not with an answer, just with silence, repeated on a longer and longer loop. That's how most of these go. This one didn't stop there. In 2022, Elmira Sergeant Bill Goodwin landed a grant from a nonprofit called Season of Justice, aimed specifically at funding advanced DNA work on cases exactly like this one. He brought in the FBI, specifically Special Agent Kenneth Jensen, and by 2023, they'd partnered with a lab called Othram, along with a team of students from Russell Sage College, doing the genealogical legwork. What they had was 0.4 nanograms of DNA, a fragment so small you couldn't see it without a microscope. After 59 years, degradation, and 2 failed database runs, this spec was the last shot. If it didn't hold up, there wasn't going to be another one. Jensen packed it in dry ice and shipped it to Othram's lab in Texas. And then the case nearly ended right there. Not from bad evidence, but from bad weather. An ice storm shut down FedEx's hub in Memphis. Not just any hub, the largest in the world, the place practically every overnight package in the country passes through. Mary's DNA sample was somewhere inside it, and for a stretch of time, nobody could even get someone at FedEx on the phone to find out where. Jensen reached out to the Bureau's own contacts on the ground in Memphis. An FBI liaison actually walked the hub, physically hunting for one small package among everything stranded by the storm. Goodwin later called it a scavenger hunt, and it was, except the thing they were searching for was the only surviving piece of evidence in a 60-year-old murder, sitting on dry ice with a clock running out on it. They found it. The Bureau kept it frozen until the storm broke, then shipped it on to Texas. Now the science could actually happen. Othram built a DNA profile from what they had and uploaded it to 2 public genealogy databases, the same kind regular people use to find long-lost relatives. From there, investigators built out family trees, chasing distant genetic matches further and further back, looking for anyone whose DNA lined up close enough to matter. Somewhere in that process, they also went back through Mary's last known hours, trying to see if there was anything from 1964 that a fresh set of eyes might connect to a modern lead. That included her stop at her mother's house that afternoon, the one her father never knew about. Investigators ran it down. It went nowhere. No connection to what happened next, no hidden meaning. Just a daughter seeing both her parents on a Sunday, weeks before nothing about her life would be the same again. That thread, at least, was finally closed. Not because it explained anything, but because it didn't. The real thread led somewhere else entirely. The genealogy work eventually pointed to a living man, a son, still alive, willing to give a DNA sample of his own for comparison. He agreed. That sample traced back to his father, a name that had never once come up in 62 years of interviews, reward postings, and dead-end tips. Alfred Murray Jr. Alfred Murray Jr. wasn't a name anyone in Elmira had ever circled. No connection to Mary, no connection to her family, not one mention in 62 years of files. He was a stranger, and a stranger was about to get exhumed. Alfred Murray Jr. had lived his whole life in Elmira, worked as a truck driver, raised a family there. Born around 1931 or 32, he died in 2004 at 72. Natural causes, buried not far from the community he'd never left. He wasn't a ghost, he wasn't hiding. He'd been right there the entire time. Old records turned up something investigators hadn't known to look for, an arrest at 17 for molesting 2 7-year-old sisters. That was decades before Mary Simpson was even born. It never once connected him to her case, because nobody had ever had a reason to make the connection. This wasn't a cold case that finally landed on the right suspect after years of narrowing down a list. There was no list. Murray had never been questioned, never been named in a tip, never so much as crossed a detective's desk in 62 years of investigation. The case didn't break because someone finally looked in the right direction. It broke because DNA looked somewhere nobody had thought to. One step remained between a name on a family tree and an answer investigators could actually stand behind, and it meant digging up a grave that had been undisturbed for over 20 years. In November of 2025, Elmira Police and the District Attorney's Office exhumed Alfred Murray Jr.'s remains. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children helped fund it, and a forensic anthropologist from Detroit handled the recovery. Officers who'd worked this case, some of them retired for years, some of them who'd never expected to see it close at all, showed up to watch. Then came the comparison. Murray's DNA, run against the sample recovered from Mary's skirt 62 years earlier. The odds that this DNA belonged to anyone else on Earth, less than 1 in 320 billion. There's no meaningful way to argue with a number like that. On February 10, 2026, Elmira Police Chief Kristen Thorne stood at a press conference and said what nobody in this case's 62-year history had ever been able to say out loud.
This is a historic day for the Elmira Police Department. Justice after almost 62 years.
They knew who did it. Investigators are calling it the oldest cold case ever solved using DNA, and the 18th case in New York State that Othram's lab has helped crack open. Here's what doesn't happen, though. No arrest, no trial, no sentence read out in a courtroom. Murray died in 2004, more than 2 decades before his name ever surfaced. Justice, in this case, doesn't come with a verdict. It comes with a name, a confirmed match, and a family finally allowed to stop wondering. Police say, with confidence, that Murray was responsible. for the assault, and for her death. Nobody's dressing that up, and nobody should. What they still don't have, and likely never will, is why. Why Mary? Why that hillside? Why a man with no connection to her or her family chose that Sunday to become the reason her name would take 62 years to rest? DNA can tell you who. It was never going to be able to tell you that. Linda Galpin was 16 years old in March of 1964, standing over her little sister's casket, trying to make sense of something that wasn't going to make sense that year, or the next one, or for 60 more after that. She's 78 now. She still lives in Elmira. She still visits the grave. For 6 decades, Linda carried this the way you carry something you've stopped expecting to ever put down. 2 failed DNA runs. Detectives who retired without an answer. A book published in the fall of 2025, just months before Murray's name surfaced, capturing a family that had made peace with never knowing, because that seemed like the only realistic outcome left. Then, in February, it wasn't.
Right now, I do feel very happy that it finally got solved after almost 62 years. It's going to take me a little while for it to sink in. And I thank everybody for all their help, how they did it. You know, I'm just happy.
I'm just glad justice was finally done, Linda said. I always said it would never happen in my lifetime. It almost didn't. A single fragment of DNA, invisible to the eye, survived 59 years in an evidence room, then a shipping crisis in Memphis, then 2 failed database runs, and still somehow made it far enough to answer a question nobody alive in 1964 believed would ever get answered. No arrest ever came, no trial. But in 1964, before anyone had a word for DNA evidence, someone in an Elmira police department still thought to save it. A speck too small to see, kept safe for 62 years, waiting on a science that didn't exist yet to catch up to it. It finally did, and Linda Galpin got to see it. If you like this coverage, join our community by subscribing to the channel. Every subscriber inspires us to keep making videos we're passionate about sharing with you.